so we're starting with chapter 1. Okay, key heading here is basic economic ideas and resource allocation. Alright, this is what I would do if I was you and studying this stuff. Like if I had to actually study and learn the stuff myself, this is my technique. This is how I would study. Okay, so basic economic ideas and resource allocation. Okay, so the first thing is looking at, well, what is this area actually going to focus on? Well, we know it's going to be looking at two things. Obviously, resource allocation is the second, and then you've got this whole idea of economic ideas. Okay, so you know there's two areas here. Then what I would do here is look at the different outcomes. Right, so read the first outcome, and what's the outcome focusing on? Just the key word.
What is meant by fundamental economic problem of limited resources and unlimited ones?
Okay, so what are they focusing on here?
So they're basically saying that what's the economic problem?
Good.
They have limited resources and unlimited ones.
Okay, so remember, limited resources meaning?
There's only a certain amount of coal in the world.
Exactly.
There's an unlimited one for coal.
Exactly. Okay, so the key here is economic problem. That's the word that stands out. So now on my diagram, I know in this chapter they're going to talk about the economic problem. Guaranteed. Why? It's in the outcomes.
Yeah.
See, this is how I'm focusing on in terms of scope. That's what I do. So it doesn't matter what topic it is. I want to know what is this chapter actually going to give us in terms of knowledge and information.
Yeah.
And if you can pull out the key things, then in the chapter they then expand on those concepts.
Yeah.
So on your mind map, I would have one branch called economic problem. Okay. So you've got the main idea, and then separate little branch, economic problem, and then leave space underneath that because you're going to add and you're going to build onto the mind map.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'll write that here. So number one, we know economic problem. So that's something that we definitely need to take away from this chapter. Okay, next point.
Oh, we're going to do next. Oh, okay. What is meant by scarcity and the inavailability of choices that have to be made by individuals, firms, and governments? What is meant by the scarcity and the inavailability of choices that have to be made by individuals?
Okay, so what stands out there?
Well, the different individuals, firms, and governments.
Okay, that's the choices, right?
Yeah.
And you're right, because individual firms and government are going to be making choices that's going to affect the economy. Good. Okay, so they're talking about this whole idea of scarcity. But remember, scarcity links to what we spoke about earlier, which was limited resources, unlimited ones. Okay, so scarcity is something that will fall under economic problem. It'll be part of that. Okay, because remember, the economic problem is we have this whole idea of
limited resources
and unlimited ones. Exactly. So under economic problem, this concept of scarcity is going to arise. We don't know where, but it'll come up later. Okay, so I wouldn't add that yet until we look at this. Okay, next.
What is meant by opportunity cost?
Opportunity cost, right?
Yeah.
What is an opportunity?
It's an opportunity to get something better, or do something better in replace of something.
Okay, good. With an opportunity, the point I want to try and make is there a trade-off between something for something else? There always is. Okay, so when looking at opportunities, yes, it's either giving up something for something else, and that something else might be better or worse than the other thing. Okay, but no one really knows. So what must we do? We need to choose between those two different things. Okay, so another key word here, opportunity cost. Exactly, that's another key word that they. Yes, opportunity cost. See, but we don't know that yet, but you'll know that after you've read the chapter. Okay, so that's why mind maps are nice to do, but mind maps it takes a lot of, how can I say, space to build a mind map. That's why, okay, you've got one page, and you're writing quite big, it's going to be difficult to make it bigger. So generally with mind maps, you would want either more space to do more, because remember, like I could write all these things on the mind map. You could write scarcity, you could write opportunity cost, but then the thing is we need to fit it in where it needs to go. Okay, which it's under the economic problem. Okay, but opportunity cost, another thing you're definitely going to see in this chapter. Okay, next.
Why the basic questions of what, how, and from whom products takes place have been addressed in all economies.
Okay, so production is something else that they're discussing, which again relates to this whole idea of resources that are limited.
Yeah.
Okay, so more about the same thing.
What is meant by, the meaning of the term product that is?
It's Latin. Ceteris Paribus. Okay, also very, very, very important economic phrase. Okay, so Latin phrase, Ceteris Paribus. Ceteris Paribus. Okay, this is like famous. Famous economic saying. Okay, it's like if you almost every economist likes to talk about Ceteris Paribus. Okay, like I mean, it's like how you probably talk about. Let me think now. Like harmony and bass, like in your music.
Yeah.
Like it's like that stuff that you just talk about, and like it's jargon that's specific to music.
Yeah.
Ceteris Paribus is jargon specific to economics. Okay, economists like using that phrase. Okay, and to give you the summary for it now, it's keeping all else equal. Okay, so economists like to make deductions about things. Okay, but remember, can you assume, so let me use the example you spoke about earlier. You said there's a high rate of unemployment in South Africa because people are lazy. Why did you say that?
Because I look at a lot of people that are begging on the side of the road and I say they don't have an education, but they could work in a supermarket packing shelves.
Okay, so that's something that you've looked at, but now keeping all else equal, let's say that individual did try go work in a shop as a packer or something like that, but they didn't get that opportunity. So now keeping all else equal, meaning keeping everything else the same without changing anything. So if you make that assumption, if you say people are lazy and that's why they don't have any jobs, then you need to make a blanket assumption. So with Ceteris Paribus, this is normally the pre-assumptions when drawing conclusions on something. Okay, so if you're saying there's a high rate of unemployment in the country because of a lack of education, that's something else we could state. Well, then keeping all else equal would say, well, we're going to keep everything else the same. So we're not going to say, well, do you agree that today you might require more skills than before to work in certain industries?
Yeah.
Right, so maybe, I don't know, a packer today. Let's talk about that example. So you said someone who's begging and who's not employed currently could probably still work in retail doing something. But do you agree that the packer at the retail store will need some form of maths or English? Would they or wouldn't they? They probably wouldn't. But would the cashier need?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so the cashier would need some maths and English because they're more communicating. As you said, maybe the packer would only need communication. Perhaps, yeah. Not so much the maths. Right, but even so, that's like keeping things equal. Okay, so that's why Ceteris Paribus is so important from an economic point of view, because economists make these assumptions about data to draw conclusions in order to make it credible. Okay, in terms of, so if you make that assumption that, well, there's a high level of unemployment because people are lazy, then there needs to be some sort of assumption that backs it, that allows your statement to be true.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what it's looking at. That's the crux of it. Okay, next.
what is meant by the margin and decision making at the margin?
Okay, so that's also looking at economic problem, and they're looking at margin. I think we spoke about margin accounting, right? Do you remember what that is?
Profit margin.
Yeah, like margin, like marginal.
Yeah.
What's
We
that?
spoke about profit margin.
Yeah. So profit margin is what?
I think
The
the profit that you make within certain boundaries.
Okay, so if I'm selling stationery, let's say I'm selling this eraser, okay? What profit margin do you think is on the eraser?
Maybe 5 to
Okay, so
10 rand.
okay, you're talking about rands. Would you say it's a percentage?
Oh yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it might be 5, 10, 20, 30, 40% of the costs. So that's the margin. So when looking at economics, marginal is looking at the next. Okay, so the next item. Right, what utility are we going to get in the next item? Right, so let's talk about juice. On a hot day, can you drink a lot of juice?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd probably drink more juice on a hot day than you would on a cold day, right? But even on a hot day, is there a limit to the amount of juice that you can drink?
No.
Yes.
Well, no, if you want to drink a liter, you can.
Okay, what about 10 liters? There's a limit, right?
Yeah.
So marginal is looking at the next. So if we keep eating, okay, so let's say you love food. Okay, what food do you like? Or love? What food do you really like? Crisps. Okay, chips. So if you're eating crisps, could you eat one packet?
Doritos.
Okay, but could you eat one packet?
One packet.
One packet. And would that be enjoyable? Okay. Would you like a second packet?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you like a third packet? Probably not.
No.
So you would stop after 2 packets.
Yeah.
Why?
Because then I'm going to be fat.
Okay. Besides gaining weight from eating too much crisps, why else wouldn't you eat another packet?
There's a limit.
Because you get tired of it, right? So the first packet's really nice. Second packet, not bad. Third packet, now it's getting a bit too much.
Yeah.
Okay, so have you heard the saying, too much of a good thing is actually bad?
Yeah.
Right, because if you have too much of a good thing, it actually reduces the value of that item. Right? And that's why things in moderation are best. And that's why you only eat 1 or 2 packets of chips and you don't eat 10 or 15 packets. Because eating 10 and 15 packets wouldn't give you the same satisfaction, exactly. And that's what it's about. In economics, they talk about utility as being the satisfaction that you get from a decision.
Yeah.
Right, so for example, if the government had to give everyone a job, would that be good?
No.
It would be, but now what's the next thing that's going to occur? So if everybody has a job, would there be any consequences to that?
Well, now
Probably.
the government has to pay everyone.
Well, if the government gives everyone a job, yes.
Yeah.
So the government would have to pay everyone. So the government would have a lot of salary to cover. Correct. Okay. Go back to the.
Okay.
Yeah.
The importance of the time dimension in economics.
Okay. So time dimension. Everything is based on. Well, what's going to happen in the future? Okay. So if you make a decision now, what's the impact going to be?
The difference between positive and normative statements.
Okay. So positive and normative. Again, looking at 2 different types of statements that we can make about something, right? It's looking at that whole idea of almost like cause and effect in a way. So, if we know what causes something, so if you actually knew what the cause of unemployment was, would you be able to solve the problem?
Yeah.
Probably, but even knowing the cause might not solve the problem. So, if the problem is lack of education,
But you could help prevent the problem.
you could help reduce or prevent it from happening, possibly. So now, if you said everyone, is unemployed because of a lack of education,
Yeah.
if you gave everyone education, would you not have unemployment?
No.
No, you would still have unemployment, but now you've got unemployed, educated people. All right. it also comes down to maybe number of jobs. Okay, so yes, you can educate everybody, but there might only be a certain amount of jobs available, possibly. Okay, next.
What is meant by factors of production?
Okay, that's another important thing. Okay, yeah, sorry, keep.
Labor and enterprise.
Yeah, so that's another thing that's quite important from a business point of view as well. We probably covered that in business, factors of production, labor, resources, and so on. No, that's product price, that's the 4 Ps.
Oh, yeah.
That's different. Okay, but similar, yeah. Next.
What is meant by the division of labor?
Okay.
So like the hierarchy.
No, not hierarchy, division of labor. So are all jobs the same?
No.
No. Are all people the same? No. So labor is looking at what? Skills.
Yeah.
So what skills can you have?
Well, it depends what you specialize in.
Okay, so give me some examples.
You could be a carpenter.
Okay, so carpentry would be very technical, creative, versus
A lawyer.
a lawyer, very logical,
Yeah.
reasoning, etc. Okay, good.
How resources are allocated in markets, planned and mixed economies.
Okay, that's also something else that kind of fits into this economic problem. Right, so the one thing is having scarce resources, dealing with opportunity costs, dealing with this whole concept of marginal. The other thing is the allocation. So now we know what the problem is. If we know there's a problem with scarce resources, are we going to be careful with where we allocate them?
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, next.
Problems of transition when central planning is an economy is reduced.
Okay, what is central planning referring to?
Like the planning of the whole.
Yes, and who does that?
The government.
Exactly, yeah. So central planning generally refers to someone centralized, meaning the government, person in leadership position, etc. Okay, good.
The characteristics of a production possibility curve and how opportunity cost can be applied.
Okay, see, things we've seen already.
Yeah.
Spoke about opportunity cost, we know how important that is. Production again, same thing.
The function and characteristics of money and types of money.
Okay, that's also very important from an economics point of view. They talk about a medium of exchange. Which is this whole concept of money and what money is. Okay, so we use money often, right? Okay, it's important for a what? A economy.
Yeah.
But economies operate off a base of money. Okay, it's about the flow. So that's also something we need to look at. Flow of money / resources. Okay, next.
How goods can be classified into free goods, private goods, public goods, merit goods, and demerit.
Okay, so that's relating to factors of production. Remember, factors of production is what goes into making those goods.
Yeah.
The output, so output is what? The goods. Goods and services. They don't talk about services yet, but it's something that we need to consider. Here they talk about different types of goods. Okay, so the word good might be used more loosely in terms of also covering services, because they talk about public goods. So a public good could be the road.
Yeah.
A public good could be the hospital.
Yeah.
The public good could also be like service related or police, the ambulance, etc. Okay.
The problems associated with information failure.
Okay. Right, so that's quite an easy concept to understand. If we don't have enough information, does that help us or harm us? Correct. Okay, so information failure is a way of looking at things in terms of not knowing everything.
Yeah.
Right, and sometimes you've got to make decisions based on not knowing everything.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so looking at the learning objectives, that's the first thing that I would look at, and then you'll see all the detail comes in the chapter. And then we would build our notes from that. Yeah, but that's what we've pulled out. So we've already got the key words that we're going to have on our diagram. Okay, we know factors of production is going to be there. We know we'll have economic problem, we'll have things like scarcity, opportunity cost, and so on. Right, and that's a good place to start. And then this you can always come back to later to see, well, have you covered all the key areas? Right, because there'll be activity and questions that will be based on it. Okay. Alright, so let's just cover one concept today and then we'll call it a day. We'll just look at this whole idea of scarcity and we'll look at this limited resources. So I just want to look at that page. Okay, production and consumption is looking at the other bits. Okay. Alright, so first thing here is one economic problem or many?
Must I read it?
Yeah.
Okay. Economists have to deal with a whole range of economic problems. You may have seen TV programs about the missionary of unemployment and poverty. You may have read about the difficulties caused by inflation or heard politicians discuss exchange rate crisis on the evening news. You may also be aware of debates surrounding issues such as the acute shortage of skilled labor, the benefits of greater liberations or
That's freedoms, yeah. Liberations mean things that we take for granted, our freedoms.
liberations of international trade, the problem of global warming and the population explosion in many developing economies. Despite the extensive range of issues which economists are trained to consider, they often talk about the economic problem. This is the fundamental problem from which all others arise. This is the fact that we have scarce resources to satisfy our unlimited ones. As a result of this problem, which is sometimes called the problem of scarcity, we have to make a choice. And it is the task of the economist to explain and analyze the nature of choice facing economic agents such as consumers, producers, and governments.
Okay, right, so now we're discussing like study technique and how we should go about summarizing this.
Yeah.
See, so now I've read this once, okay? As you said, you like studying from notes, so we don't have to go back and reread this whole thing, because like obviously the further you go with your studies, the more the volume gets. So right now we've got 128 pages to study for your AS levels. Later on, you might have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 pages of content that you need to do and you need to get through. So the thing is, to work smarter, not harder, you need to always look at like ways to condense information.
Yeah.
So I want you to tell me what stood out for you from that paragraph. Just one thing.
I think it was basically just the fact that we need to realize that there's limited resources and unlimited ones.
Perfect. And that's all you need to take away from that chapter.
How the resources are distributed between the government and what did they say?
Yeah, it's the choice of allocation.
Consumers, producers, and government.
Yeah. So if I was highlighting things in the text, that's why I was asking you, do you like studying from the textbook or do you like studying? So for me, when I studied, I used to study from the textbook, so where I highlighted stuff, and I used to like write little pencil notes and things like that. It's different because we're making notes. That's fine. Anything works. So what the key is, doesn't matter what you do. You can highlight here, you can write down, you can type it into the computer, you can draw the mind map, doesn't matter. But the key thing that needs to be taken away from here is scarce resources satisfying unlimited ones. There's the definition. So that you can add to your mind map under the economic problem. Now we've got the definition.
So is that
Scarce,
the definition?
yes, scarce resources satisfying unlimited ones. Okay, now I know what the economic problem is. And what else did they say? Scarcity is making a choice. Okay, and then they looked at this, making a choice. And I would highlight that, and I would maybe highlight the word scarcity as well, those two. So then under that, I would write down scarcity and then just brackets, making a choice. If this was a mind map, I'm just typing it here, so it looks a little bit different. Scarcity. Ooh, scarcity. That's right. Okay, now remember, the mind map is a tool that's going to help you with studying later, and then when you come back to this, you need to be able to explain it. So something, depending on how detailed you want to make the mind map, what you could do here is you could either add an example, or if you know what that means, then that's fine, because you'll have to apply this to different scenarios later on. Because tests and exams will try to test, do you understand what scarcity is, do you understand what the economic problem is. Okay, but see, that's all you need to take from that. See, and that's how I would do it. And then once you've done that, you've got everything. Then it's literally looking back at your notes and then just applying it to different scenarios. Okay, great. Okay, key terms.
Resources, inputs available for the production of goods and services, one's needs that are not always realized. Scarcity, a situation in which wants and needs are in excess of the resources available.
Yeah.
Choice underpins the concept that resources are scarce, so choices have to be made by consumers, firms, and companies.
Correct. Okay, so that's just the definitions of those words, which you already spoke about. Don't need to, yeah. Okay, unless you don't understand any of them.
No.
So before this, did you know what a resource was?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you know what a want was? Right. So if you didn't know what those terms are, then I would make a note. See, then this is personal.
I think maybe I should just make of scarcity.
Okay, perfect.
I know what it is now.
Yes. Yes, that's perfect. So remember, make notes that help you as much as possible based on what you need to remember. So if there's anything that you're feeling a little bit unsure about, that you want to make a note, make a note. It's always a good idea. Okay, things that you know you don't have to worry about because it's things that you already know. You have that base. Okay, don't worry about the tip. They're just giving you some insight there in terms of what you need to be mindful of. We spoke about how important limited resources are and making choices. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
Okay, the fundamental economic problem.
So should I make a new heading?
No, don't make a heading. Remember, see, it's taking content, taking information, and then trying to fit it in where it needs to go. Okay, that's what we need to do for all the 128 pages.
Okay, the fundamental economic problem. Fundamental economic problem is scarce resources in relation to unlimited ones. This problem is summarized in figure 1.1.
Okay, so figure 1.1 is down there.
So we've got limited resources, labor, land, capital, which is production.
Correct.
Organization, enterprise, risk.
Okay, so what I would do here, by resources, I would open a bracket and I would write down FOP. That's what I would do on my
What does that mean?
factors of production. Yeah, you just said land, labor, capital. Right, so remember, you looked at the diagram, you said, oh, I see that, I know what it means, can understand it. Just add that to your diagram. So by resources, where we had resources,
Where?
scarce resource at the top.
Oh, yeah.
By resources, I would just put FOP, factors of production. Okay, then you're building your mind map. So see, you can see all the things. Oh, resources, should be thinking about that. Okay, because that also helps with essays. Because then with essays, you've got this whole idea. Let's just say the essay was about the economic problem. Then you would not only talk about limited resources, but you could also expand on factors of production, because those are the resources that are limited. Do you see how it all fits in?
Yeah.
Okay. Keep going. Key concept, yeah, this is scarcity and choice. That's important. That you should read, definitely.
Okay. Scarcity and choice. The fundamental problem in economics is that resources are scarce and ones are unlimited. So there's always a choice required between competing users for the competing users for the resources. This is the first of 5 key concepts that are central to the subject content of the Cambridge International ASNA level economics syllabus. This concept is a recurring theme, particularly in the first chapter.
Okay, so yeah, we don't have to worry about all the different levels and that they mentioned, but what is important is this competition. What is competition?
Competing against people that are doing the same thing as you.
For what?
For limited resources.
Exactly. So competition exists because resources are limited, and wants are unlimited. Okay, so that's why competition exists. Resources. Right, so those are words that I would highlight. So I would just add competition somewhere to your diagram. Okay, because competition is almost like the byproduct of having scarce resources. Does that make sense? Okay, so we know what the economic problem is. We know it deals with scarce resources. We know what scarcity is. Okay, we're looking at the economy.
Yeah.
So in the economy, because of this, you have competition.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the key. Once, just add an S there. Unlimited.
So could you email these?
Of course I will. Yeah. Once we finish every chapter, then I'll send it like as a just one file, because I'm going to use this one file for each chapter. So like we're doing chapter 1. This is chapter 1, and then once chapter 1's done, then I'll send it to you. Okay. All right. So yeah, remember it's just the first lesson today, so it's just a bit longer than normal in terms of explaining what I'm doing, but it'll go quicker. Yeah, we're getting in the rhythm, correct. Yeah, so after today, we're not going to take the whole 2 hours just to do 1 or 2 pages. I mean, we did quite a bit because we did introduction, we went through this, we highlighted what we needed to, but obviously in future, we'll probably be able to do 10, maybe more pages a day, based on what we're doing. So remember,
we have lots of time for past papers with this.
yeah, we should have lots of time for economics because it's a very short module. It's only 5 chapters. Okay, but yeah, so let's carry on. We just want to finish off the economic problem.
So scarce resources.
Yes.
In economics, we categorize the resources available to us into 4 types. These are known as the factors of production.
Notice you already had it there.
Yeah.
Okay, see how important that is. Separate branch.
Yeah.
So create a separate branch and label the branch factors of production, because that relates to this whole idea of scarce resources and the economic problem. Okay, so another key concept is factors of production. In brackets next to it, just put FOP and then maybe highlight those 2 FOPs. So we use a nice orange or yellow and then highlight the FOP. So you know where it fits in. See, this is like the technique. Okay. Alright, so number 1. So now underneath that, put 1 and just write the word land. Okay, then the textbook's obviously going to give you a lot of information. It is important to read it, so I would encourage you to read it, and then if you've got it, yes, and then anything important, we pull it out. If it's not important, we don't need it.
This factor is a natural resource. It includes the surface of the earth, lakes, rivers, and forests. It also includes mineral deposits below the earth and the climate above, as well as small area of land that makes up a farm or factory. The reward of owning land is the income that is generated from the land, obviously.
Alright,
so like if you were a farmer.
Yeah, so if you're the farmer, you can own the land, but the land also generates income.
Yeah.
Okay. There's nothing else that you need to write there other than land. Okay, then they've got key terms which you already knew.
Yeah.
Next page.
Should I write this?
No, you don't need that. That's just showing you what the diagram looks like. Okay.
Labor. This is.
There you go. 2.
Okay.
Add to your diagram, labor. Okay, now you read the little paragraph just to understand the grasp of it.
This factor is the human resource. The basic determinant of which. Sorry. Okay. The basic determinant of which is the nation's population. Not all the population is available to work because some are above or below the working population age, and some choose not to work. The reward of labor is wage or salary that is paid.
Okay, so key point there. What's the key point?
That it's a human resource.
Okay, so it's people. How are people remunerated? Through wages and salaries. Okay, so there's a cost of labor. So I would add that to your diagram. That's always something that economists need to also be mindful of, is cost. Okay, so cost you can say next to labor or labor costs, and then just put brackets wages or salaries. Okay, next.
Okay, capital. The factor is any man-made aid to production. In this category, we would include a simple spade and a complex car assembly plant. Capital goods help land and labor produce more units of output. They improve the output from land and labor. The reward to capital is the rate of return that is earned.
Good. Okay, so that's.
Three factors are organized into units of production by firms.
Okay, so do you agree? Those first 3 are actually the factors of production.
Yeah.
And the last one, entrepreneur, is the person that
Puts them together.
combines all of them. Exactly. Okay, so capital is just the machinery, e.g. machinery, etc. Okay, and that's what I would do just to remind me what it is. So capital doesn't always mean money. Capital also means other resources that are assets in nature.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's it. Now we need to read the last bit, which is look at the entrepreneur, which we know is the most important because they combine everything together.
Okay, entrepreneur. This factor carries out 2 functions. First, the enterprise factor organizes the other 3 factors of production. Second, enterprise involves taking the risk of production, which exists in a free enterprise economy. Some firms are small with few resources. The functions of enterprise are undertaken by a single individual. The entrepreneur. In larger, more complex firms, the functions are divided with
Salaried, yeah.
Oh, salaried, sorry. Salaried managers organizing.
Just means you're paying them, that's all.
The other factors and shareholders taking the risk.
Okay, good.
The return for enterprise is the profits that are made.
Okay, so again, grouping everything together, keyword there was creates the business and takes risk. Right, entrepreneurs have to take risk. So that's number 4. Okay, and then we just got 2 more paragraphs. 3 more, just the 1 more as well, yeah.
Oh, this and then that.
Yeah.
Some economies have a large quantity of high quality factors of production at their disposal. They can create lots of goods and services to satisfy the wants of their population. They are said to have a good factor endowment. Other economies lack sufficient qualities of one or more of the factors.
Okay, endowment means what the business has been given. So like endowment is what they've got. So some businesses have more land, more labor, more capital. All businesses are different. That's what they're talking about.
Developing countries, for example, might have large quantities of land and labor, but lack lack sufficient capital and enterprise. The former planned economics of Eastern Europe, such as Poland, Slovakia, found it difficult to develop because they had few people with entrepreneurial experience, as well as lack of business capital. Entrepreneurship was not encouraged in the socialist economic system. This has now changed with the move to a market economy and the opportunities presented through membership of the European Union. Poland, Slovakia, and other former planned economics have benefited from increased foreign investments from the rest of the EU and elsewhere. Firms have been able to make good use of skilled labor, especially.
Okay, so that's looking at markets that are created because of
foreign investment.
Different countries and different levels of factors of production.
Yeah.
So because one country has more labor and another has more resources, they can then trade between themselves. Okay, and that's what they're describing. They're just describing a market. Okay, there's nothing important there that you need to add to your summary. Okay, production and consumption. Nice short one.
Production and consumption. Resources are combined in process of production to create goods and services. Goods and services have the capacity to satisfy wants. The process through which individuals use up goods and services to satisfy wants is known as consumption. Some goods, such as a chocolate bar, are quickly used up to satisfy our wants. Other things satisfy wants over a long period. They are called consumer durables. Examples of consumer durables include television sets, refrigerations, and vehicles.
Okay, so there you've got different goods. Okay, did you know what the word production and consumption meant before that?
Production, but not really consumption. Consumption, yeah.
Are you happy with those two concepts, or do we need to make a note
No,
for
I'm
it?
going to make a note for it.
Okay, for which one?
Here it is
Consumption.
the consumer durables.
Okay, those are just different goods. So maybe what I would do here is factors of production. I would just open a bracket. This is creating goods, example, durable goods. That's what I would do on my little bit here.
Okay.
Where do you want to add? So were you not familiar with consumption then? You want to add that somewhere?
No, that's fine.
Consumption's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then the last one was just the unlimited ones, which describes what we spoke about there, which was the scarcity problem, basically. Okay, that's the last bit that we need to look at, this whole idea of unlimited ones. Okay, there's always this idea of we want more and more and more. Okay, right, so just read that last bit and then we'll wrap up.
Unlimited ones. We can all identify certain basic needs that must be satisfied if we are to stay alive. These include the obvious essentials of food, shelter, and clothing. We might also identify those ones that are clearly less essential, but we think improve our quality of life. These might include television sets, cars, trips to the cinema, and so on. These are sometimes called luxuries, but it is important to remember that what might be a luxury for one individual may be considered an essential for others.
Okay, last bits.
This is because we all have a scale of preferences, with our more urgent ones at the top and the less urgent ones at the bottom. Each individual scale of preferences is a product of a complex set of influences involving culture, upbringings, and life experiences. These together influence our likes and dislikes. Unsurprisingly, since we all have different experiences, there's a bond to be great variations between any two individuals. Scales of preferences. You may find it interesting to conduct a class exercise in which everyone makes a list of 10 ones in descending order of priority. When you compare results, you may be surprised to find that although there may be broad agreements on the first few choices, there is likely to be considerable variations as you compare people's choices over the full list. You may also consider how your list would compare to lists compiled by others with very different life experiences, such as your teacher, your grandparents, or even a student of economics in another country. A further point to consider is whether you could imagine any end to your list if you were not limited to 10 choices. It is important to remember that our wants are continually expanding, developing and changing. Some wants expand as we grow up, marry and raise a family. Imagine how our housing needs change as we go through this process, or how we change from wanting a small car with 2 doors to wanting a large family. Salon with 4 doors. Saloon with 4 doors.
That's a car.
Yeah. Some of our wants develop and expand when we see others around us enjoying goods and services, and we feel the need to keep up. Sometimes our wants change as we have new experiences. For example, we might decide to go on a diet because we have seen a TV program about obesity. All of these points to the fact that we can never imagine a time when all our wants are satisfied. Our wants are continually expanding and changing, despite the fact that we are continually finding new, more efficient ways to produce more and more goods and services with the resources available to us. We are still faced with the fundamental economic problem that we have limited resources and unlimited ones. As stated earlier, this is sometimes called the problem of scarcity, and as a result, we have to make choices.
Okay, nice. Right, so key takeaway there before you look at my notes. What did you learn from that paragraph?
We all have different ones.
That's important.
To the way that we were brought up.
Good.
And where was it?
That's right. That was the one key thing. There's just one other thing.
And
anything else that stood out? Do things stay the same?
No. Our wants are always expanding and growing.
Yes, correct. Okay, so that's the most important thing to take away from that. So why are wants unlimited? Well, wants are unlimited is because they're always changing and developing and they change as we go through life as well. Okay, that's all you need to really pull out from there. Now, I just want to try space this better. Okay. Alright, so that's what I wrote there. Just expanding on unlimited ones. So earlier you wrote on your diagram, your mind map, where did you write unlimited ones? There at the bottom.
Yeah.
Perfect. So now add there. I would put this just as a side note or a separate note. Okay. Wants change or wants are very different. So I just used the word preferences or tastes, and I said it changes over time. And that's something we need to take away from that bit. That's it. Finish for today. It's a good start. So as I said, I just want to show you a different way of studying in terms of mind maps. For me, it worked a lot when it came to theory, just because I could sort of see how things linked, and I like process, so it sort of like fits everything nicely together. Again, do what works for you. So at least then you've got the mind map. I'm showing you how to do this. Build that skill, and then here you've got some like written text, so you've got both. So at least we're trying to cover it in as much detail as possible.
That's what I would be doing.
Perfect. Yeah, so at least you've got this, and then you've got that. It's great. Yeah, just mind maps is so nice to draw it. Yeah, it's difficult to do it on computer. Okay. All right, good job. Well done. Nice start.